Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have plenty of things to discuss. We're going to start with the easiest stuff and then move on. Tonight we will have Professor E. Michael Jones. He wrote a book. The name of that book is The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit and Its Impact on World History. We're going to be discussing his book and see what he really thinks took place in the last 2,000 years. Obama. We've told you on this show that the war on Obama will start as soon as he's known to be the presumptive Democratic nominee. The New Yorker, ladies and gentlemen, came up with a very nasty cartoon depicting Obama as a Muslim militant and his wife as a revolutionary. Most of you probably have seen that picture of the on the front page of the New Yorker. We're going to go ahead and throw that picture on there now, to see that the battle is getting bad, it's getting worse. Can we put that picture on, please? Okay, picture number one. All right. Well, anyhow, looks like we're having problems with graphics again. Okay. That's the cover page on New Yorker magazine. As you see, Osama, the son of Laden, is pictured there. You have the American flag in the burning, in the fireplace, and you have Obama and his wife doing that terrorist jab, as we have discussed here a few weeks back. Militant, Afro, Obama dressed up as a Muslim bin Laden follower. I think you know where we're going with this, and you know what is happening. Okay. All right. As you see, we had to take care of some technical stuff here. Someone was talking to me in sign language, but we got it now. So let's go back to that picture because it's very important, that picture of Obama and his wife on the cover of the New Yorker. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we've shown you how an Israeli newspaper one time had a cartoon showing Obama painting the White House black. And I think probably it was about 2 months ago when we had on this show, we asked America if America is ready for a black president. And of course, now we see that the mainstream media is very much asking the same question. And with something like this, you can see with a picture like this how bad it will be when things, you know, as we go towards November, the war on Obama is going to continue. Like I told you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not really a fan of either one of them, but definitely I'm not a fan of McCain. And if you ever played Russian roulette, if you have two guns, and one of them you know that the bullet is in the chamber, and the other one you don't know where the bullet is, I think you would take your chance with the gun that you don't know that the bullet is definitely in the chamber, because that's what McCain is. And if we're going to kill ourselves with McCain, that would be the case if we do elect McCain. Anyhow, the United States is changing its stand on Iran. As a matter of fact, this Saturday, William Burns, the third man at the State Department, will be sitting down in a meeting, or at a meeting, with Jalili, the head of the Iranian nuclear negotiating team, and Javier Solana, the guy responsible for Europe national security. As you see, the Bush administration said that they will not talk to the Iranian regime. And when Obama said that he will sit down and talk to them, everybody thought he was being a traitor and we should not be talking to them. Well, guess what? The Bush administration is thinking of opening up an office in Iran, which will lead to an embassy in Iran. So I really think things are changing in the Bush administration to apparently they think if they make things a little bit better for, out there in the Middle East, that McCain will end up being the President of the United States. Well, there is an interfaith conference in Spain as we speak. The conference was sponsored by the Saudi government and with personal touches from the Saudi king, King Abdullah. It started yesterday, and today is the working session. As you see, this picture came out of this particular conference, the Interfaith Conference. I'm not really sure if people really understand what's going on. I really don't think we need interfaith conferences because everybody knows what the other religion is. And if we go back a few hundred years, we see that these religions really did not have a problem. Muslims, Christians, they did not really have a problem. Even with Jews, they did not have a problem until about 100 years ago, when the Zionist organization decided that, you know what, we need a country and we're going to go to Palestine and take their country. But if you really go back, you know, all of a sudden we are talking about civilizations and clash of civilizations and civilization wars and cultures and etc. I think probably it looks like people are listening to the wrong people there, the wrong media there, because really when it comes down to it, there is no clash of civilizations here. There is no clash of religions here. What we are seeing is not really a religious war. When was the last time? You did not even hear of a Muslim before 9/11. So I think instead of a conference to see what we think about each other, I think it needs to be a conference to see what in the world have we done in the world, and that's what the conference should be. Anyhow, Israel and Hezbollah had exchanged prisoners and also remains of soldiers, Israeli soldiers. Two of them were held by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah in return got 199 remains of Palestinians and Lebanese martyrs who were killed in the last 30 years, actually. It goes back all the way to 1978, some of these people. But it was quite a scene in Beirut yesterday where Samir Kantar, who has been held in Israeli prison for the last 30 years, he was part of that deal. And I want you to look at this picture and then look at the other picture that's going to come. This is when he was in Israel right before he crossed the border, him and other three people there. As you can see, they are dressed up in, I guess this is Israeli prison issues or whatever. And then when he got to Beirut, he very much was dressed up in like fatigue, like an army fatigue, if we can put that picture. And the first thing he said that he's glad that he came out of Israel, of Palestine actually. He called it Palestine, did not call it Israel. He said he's glad to come out because he wanted to go back to Palestine in reference to continuing the resistance to the Israeli occupation of Palestine. Which is the second picture now. It will show you the picture that we're talking about. He's here with Hezbollah leader, dressed up in fatigue, with a big smile on his face. And so things are happening there in the Middle East. Things are moving along But to tell you the truth, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not really sure they're going where. I'm not really sure if exchanging prisoners will do it, if having this conference in Spain, this interfaith conference in Spain, to give the impression, actually what they're doing with this is allowing the media to win, that what we are seeing is somehow a clash of religions, and this conference in Spain where Jews, Muslims, and Christians got together, sponsored by the Saudi government, where the Saudi government thinks or feels that they really have to defend their religion in the face of this huge media campaign to discredit that religion. But I really think, instead of, because conferences between Catholics and Muslims and Christians and Muslims, Jews and Muslims, it always was going on. It's not something new to have a Muslim and a Christian sit down and talk. But when you have a conference, call it interfaith conference, just to say that, hey, look, we love you guys and we don't have a problem with you, that is silly, and that is playing into the media's own court, that actually there is a clash of religion here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's a clash of religion here, it did not start on 9/11. It did not start with September 11, 2001, and it did not start with the Muslims. The clash started 2,000 years ago, when there was only Jews, and then someone decided that, you know what, he did not like the way Jewish religion was going, so he decided to do something about it. And that person was Jesus Christ. He decided, this is not the way to go. We need something different. And since that day, many, many things have taken place between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. But today we are going to concentrate with my guest, who is Professor of History, Dr. E. Michael Jones. He wrote a book called The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit and Its Impact on World History. Now, I want everybody to have an open mind, because this is an extremely important book coming from a man who had studied the subject and knows a lot about it. This has nothing to do with Jews or Christians or someone who doesn't like Jews or someone who is anti-Semitic. You know that I have been called anti-Semitic, even though I am a Semite myself, but I guess I am a self-hating Semite. Anyhow, in his book, Dr. Michael Jones, E. Michael Jones, very much takes the history of what exactly took place. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop here and go directly to Dr. Jones, and we're going to see exactly what his book is all about and what does he think it's going to be the end of this. I mean, it's been 2,000 years since we've been going through this. Is it going to be, are we going to see an end to it? Dr. Jones, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Tillawi. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Jones, I want just very briefly the Jewish revolutionary spirit and its impact on world history. Very briefly, in 2 minutes, can you tell me what it's all about?
Yes, it's about what I consider the turning point in history. The Jewish people were God's chosen people. They had been waiting for a Messiah. When the Messiah finally came, the Jews had to decide whether they were going to accept him or reject him. I'm referring to Jesus Christ here. The Jews who accepted Jesus Christ became known as the Church, the New Israel. The Jews who rejected Jesus Christ not only rejected Jesus Christ, but they rejected the person who sent him, God the Father. But more importantly than that, they rejected God's order for the universe. The Greek word for that is logos. It's the fourth word of St. John's Gospel. Ein arche, ein ha logos is what he says in Greek. In the beginning there was logos, there was order. So you reject Christ, you reject logos, you reject the moral order of the universe, the social order, the political order. When you do that, you become a revolutionary. And so the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ chose Barabbas, who was a revolutionary, and they made a kind of solemn pact here that, they said, let his blood be on us and our people, and they committed themselves to revolution. And that has been that moment sort of set in stone, not in stone, but I mean established the parameters for human history after that fact. Human history from that point on was going to be a struggle between the Jews who accepted Jesus Christ and the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ. And that's what history has been, and that's what this book is about, 2,000 years of that struggle.
So are you telling me that the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ, those are the ones we know today as Jews?
Yes.
Are they the same people, the same theology that was back then, 2,000 years ago?
The theology of rejection took some time to develop. The name of this theology of rejection is the Talmud. And over the next 600 years, it got codified. The Palestinian Talmud was written in around 200, and by 600, that was the completion of the Babylonian Talmud. And this is basically the anti-theology based on rejection of Logos. It would be sort of the opposite of the Gospels, of the Scriptures.
Now, the Scriptures, when we say the Scriptures, we mean the Old Testament and the New Testament, correct?
Right. What I'm saying here is, just to avoid confusion, that the straight line in history is Abraham, Moses, Jesus Christ, the church. The church is the new Israel. The Gospel of St. John goes into very great detail about who are the children of Moses. Okay, the Jews come to Jesus Christ and say, we're the children of Moses, and he says, no, you can't be a child of Moses and reject me. And it gets, they go back and forth, and finally there's this big blow-up in the middle where Jesus turns to the Jews and says, your father is Satan. And this is sort of the point of departure. This is sort of the broken line in history. The people who call themselves Jews are not the children of Moses anymore. Children of Moses are the followers of Jesus Christ. It is not... this is a break with the whole racial history of the chosen people. And throughout the Gospel of St. John, you realize that the word Jew takes on a new meaning. It didn't have one that it didn't have at the beginning. There's a crucial passage in the Gospel of St. John where there was a man who was born blind. He was given his sight by Jesus Christ. And everybody heard about it, and they all rushed to the parents of the man born blind and asked if he really was born blind. And the parents got nervous, they got upset, and there's this line in the Gospel of St. John that says, the parents of the man born blind refused to speak out of fear of the Jews, because the Jews threatened to expel from the synagogue anyone who said that Jesus was the Messiah. Well, what does Jew mean here? It can't have a racial meaning. Everybody was a Jew in this world that we're talking about. So Jew at this point, you begin to realize, means someone who has rejected Christ. And that is the meaning that has taken on ever since that time.
Okay, so what happened to the Jew in the last 2,000 years? Now, we know after the destruction of the temple by the Romans, I think, what was it, 70 or 90 A.D.?
No, that was the first major event after the death of Christ.
Okay.
In other words, the Jews, they chose revolution. And that's exactly what they did. They rose up in 70 A.D., they rose up against the Roman Empire. And they were crushed, and the temple was destroyed. Now, at that point, the Jew has to create a new religion. Okay? There's no way that he can fulfill the old law anymore. He doesn't have a temple, he doesn't have a priesthood, he doesn't have animal sacrifice. And so there was a Jew in Jerusalem at that time by the name of Yochanan ben Zakkai who saw which way it was going, had himself smuggled out of the city in a shroud, went to Titus and said, I'm a friend of Rome, grant me a favor, I'd like to start a school. And so Titus granted him that favor, and he founded this school at Yavna. And that was the beginning of Judaism as we know it. It had become a debating society, focused on the synagogue, not the temple. There was no temple anymore. There could be no sacrifice. There could be no religion. The only religion now that had a temple, had a priesthood, and had a sacrifice was Christianity. And so the Jews have a new religion, and their new religion eventually, as I said, becomes a religion of rejection, as epitomized by the Talmud. It becomes a way of keeping the Jewish people in bondage by keeping them away from the truth. That's pretty much what the Talmud is.
Okay, so, if I understand you...
Back to the idea of revolution, the revolutionary spirit did not die out there. There was another revolution in 135 when Simon Bar Kokhba rose up against Rome, and this one was almost successful. The Romans were expelled from Palestine for 4 years. Simon Bar Kokhba had coins made with his image. That was a sign of independence. It was working, and then slowly but surely the same thing happened. The Romans laid siege to Jerusalem, and at the last minute, Jerusalem fell, and there was massive slaughter. And the Jews were expelled. And the men were exterminated. There were camps set up to exterminate the men, and the women and children were sold into slavery. And that was the end of the Jewish occupation of Palestine for another almost 2,000 years.
So if I understand you correctly, this new religion that they started, it was in opposition, complete opposition to what they had before, which is the Scripture, the Old Testament.
That's right. What you begin to see is that the Talmud is ultimately a repudiation of the Torah. That's what it comes down to.
So how come Christians of today look at the Jews or the Israelis in Palestine and call them the chosen people? How come?
There are two answers to that question. The first answer is the Protestant answer. The Protestants were traditionally, and I try to show this in my book, Protestants were Judaizers to a large extent. All of the major Protestant denominations, all the major Protestant movers were Judaizing, which meant basically that you had people who were raised Catholic who did not like the Catholic faith. A lot of them were priests who simply could not accept the Catholic faith. The crucifix, the cross. One of the main actions of the Hussites were an example of what I'm talking about. The people who took over Bohemia in 1410. Jan Zalewski was a Catholic priest who decided he was going to wear a sword. Well, monks are not allowed to wear swords. And so he would stage political theater, and one of the things he would do would be break into churches and smear excrement on crucifixes. This is revulsion at the cross. These are Christians who wanted to live like Jews. They wanted an earthly kingdom. And that has always been the temptation of the Judaizers, to want an earthly kingdom. And that's the history of the Protestants. And so ultimately what you have here is this creation of this thing called dispensational theology, in which, the Jews are God's chosen people. The Protestants have no sense of what the church is. And so they have no sense that the church is the new Israel. And so if you don't know that, then of course you're going to say, well, I guess the Jews are God's chosen people. It's in the Old Testament. I mean, I can read the Old Testament. Sola Scriptura is the Protestant rule. And so that explains, you can give a long, complicated story. Hello?
Okay. Now, let me just stop you here because I have a lot of questions for you, and I want to move it to the last 2,000 years of exactly what happened. I mean, they were destroyed, but now we see a resurrection of Jews. What is happening today?
Well, I mean, basically what you had here was 2,000 years of revolutionary movements in Europe. Basically every revolutionary movement had Jews involved with it. And so one of the significant revolutionary movements was the French Revolution. Napoleon needed the support of the Jews to invade Russia, so he convoked this thing called the Sanhedrin. He granted the Jews citizenship, and that was the first time that had happened in Europe. 100 years after that, 100 years after the French Revolution, there is a lot of ferment in France, a lot of people wondering, what have we gained by the revolution? And so the Catholic Church had a journal at that time, a kind of anti-revolutionary journal called Civiltà Cattolica, and they did a series of 3 articles on the aftermath of the French Revolution, in which they said basically that there was more loss than gain, that any country who rebels against God's law will end up being ruled by the Jews. Now, this caused a reaction. There was a huge reaction in France, and part of the reaction was known as the Dreyfus Affair, and the reaction to the reaction was known as Theodor Herzl and Zionism, who decided that if they couldn't live in France, they could never live in any place in Europe because France was the first country to give them citizenship, and so he started the agitation that led to the occupation of Palestine, which culminated in 1948 with the creation of the Jewish state.
Okay. Now, I mean, with an opinion like that, I'm sure that does not make you famous with the with Jews in particular, and probably with a lot of Christians, which you have been labeled as an anti-Semite on many occasions. I have too, by the way. So don't feel like you were singled out.
Can I clarify this point right now?
Sure.
Let's just clear the air. What is anti-Semitism? Okay, anti-Semitism is a form of racism. Okay, it says that the Jew basically has DNA, some type of biological inclination to do the things that we don't like. Okay, it was created, it arose in Germany. A man by the name of Wilhelm Marr is the guy who created the word. This has never been part of the Catholic faith. And I'm a Catholic, and I'm trying to articulate the traditional teaching of the Church. The traditional teaching of the Church was that a Jew was a rejecter of Christ. Okay, if the Jew rejected the rejection, in other words, if he became a Christian, if he got baptized, that was the end of the story. And all of the popes at this time throughout the Middle Ages said, you have to accept this man without prejudice, which means this is purely a theological issue. It's not a biological issue. It's not a racial issue. So I reject any notion of anti-Semitism, any idea that Jews have bad DNA or good DNA or makes them smart or anything like that. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Okay. Now, what about, like how were they able to achieve what they have achieved today from wealth and influence? Do you cover that in your book?
I cover more revolution. They have supported every revolutionary movement in Europe. This is not my testimony. Rabbi Louis Israel Newman brags about it in his book. So it's not something I'm making up. This is what, except that they think that revolution is good. Every time there was a religious movement that the church would call heretical, the Jews supported it because they wanted to break the power of the Catholic Church when it controlled Europe. And so what you had, let's say from beginning in 1410, you had a series of revolutions culminating in the biggest set of revolutions that followed World War I, in which all the traditional powers' thrones were toppled. The Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they all went down at that point.
So they could not have accomplished all that if they did not have control of money and media, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, by 1914, yes. You're talking about financiers like Jacob Schiff supporting Lenin and Trotsky. You're talking about significant control of the media.
Well,
that's true.
Just by saying that, some people might think that you are an anti-Semite.
Well, I've already tried to explain to you what anti-Semitism is. You'll never get a definition of it from organizations like the ADL because they don't want to define it, because it loses its political force once it gets defined. You're supposed to be in fear of constantly breaking some type of law that no one will ever state for you. So basically, I think what's come down to now is anything that the Jews don't like will be called anti-Semitism. Well, I'm sorry, but tolerable situation. You know, I can say things, the same things that a Jew says. I'll give you an example. I did a piece on pornography. A Jew by the name of Abrams took it and published basically everything I said, published it in the Jewish Quarterly, where suddenly it's a good thing to say. Now, I'm an anti-Semite for saying Jews are involved in pornography, but this guy who's a professor can submit his article and get tenure for saying the same thing. Well, this is an intolerable double standard, and as Americans, I don't think we can't tolerate this anymore. You know, we go along with this, and suddenly, hey, we're involved in a war in Iraq. One thing after another. And the war in Iraq now seems to be leading to a war in Iran, all because we can't say anything. Well, the situation is intolerable.
Okay. Let me just bring it a little further to some problems. Now, you used to teach at Notre Dame, professor of history at Notre Dame?
No. I was a professor of American literature at St. Mary's College, which is across the street from Notre Dame.
Oh, okay. Because somebody sent me a question saying there was a problem between you and Notre Dame, or was that problem between you and the college you were working at?
No, it was a problem between me and St. Mary's. I was hired as an assistant professor in fall of 1979 and was fired in the fall of 1980 for my stand on abortion. I was against abortion. So I had a hard time persuading people that I got fired for being against abortion at what called itself a Catholic college. But in a sense, that's part of the story here. I mean, the feminists had taken over the college, and so they, basically established the rules of discourse without telling the people that they hired.
Okay.
So at that point, I started a magazine called Fidelity Magazine, which was more kind of intra-Catholic magazine, and then a few years later, I turned it into Culture Wars magazine, which is about the culture wars.
Okay. Now, back in February, Catholic University of America had a program that they were going to very much like building Catholic communities. It was a series of program, and it was you, yourself, and John Sharp, who, by the way, we did have him here on the program to talk about his books, the Neocon 2. But you guys were going there to talk about building Catholic communities, but I understand the whole thing was canceled because the Southern Poverty Law Center had called in and said, hey, how could you have these two anti-Semitic in your school, and the whole program was canceled. Do you want to tell us something about that?
Yeah, that's essentially correct. The Southern Poverty Law Center called up, and the administration panicked, and they did not only just canceled my talk, they canceled the entire lecture series, which had, by the way, nothing to do with the Jews.
Right. So it wasn't political. It had to do with Catholics, building Catholic communities.
Yeah,
that was what the series was all about.
It was an intra-Catholic discussion about building Catholic communities, and I have been asked because I have done a book called The Slaughter of Cities, Urban Renewal as Ethnic Cleansing, about the destruction of Catholic neighborhoods in the United States after World War II. So it had nothing to do with the Jews. But once an organization like the Southern Poverty Law Center gets on your case, you're not allowed to speak ever again, ever, wherever. I mean, this is a type of draconian speech code that has been imposed on America that I find,
Now, aren't they connected with the ADL, the Southern Poverty Law Center?
I'm sure they are, but I don't know what the connection is.
Okay, because I mean, I'm just shocked at the influence they have, that they would have the Catholic University cancel a series that would have probably benefited all Catholics in the United States, or probably even around the world, but they canceled it because some guy from that center called in and complained. What does that tell you about Catholic University?
That they're a bunch of intellectual cowards. That's what it tells me. I mean, there's no solidarity among Catholics. So I don't know what to say. They're just a kind of, I mean, part of what I've done, in the wake of getting fired. Why did I get fired from a Catholic college for being against abortion? Well, because something had taken over this place. And so what I'm seeing here is the result of the sexual revolution, contraception, which, by the way, I was involved in the Cairo population control meeting in 1994, urban renewal. All these things led to basically the defeat of Catholic political power in this country. And so the Catholics are now a defeated nation living in the United States.
When you say defeated, that gives the impression of somebody defeating it or fighting it. Are you saying that the Jews are the culprit here?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Like the battle over Hollywood was a Catholic-Jew battle. The battle over contraception was a WASP Catholic battle, funded largely by the Rockefellers. But I'm saying that in America in general, the Enlightenment in America was basically a WASP Jewish alliance, especially after World War II. The ADA, Americans for Democratic Action, certainly in Philadelphia, it was a WASP Jewish alliance.
So do you feel that the fight that started 2,000 years ago is still going on today in America?
Absolutely. It's going to go on till the end of time. This is why it's in Scripture. It's an archetype. Every single Christian is going to have to face this fight. You know, Jesus said, love your enemies. Well, why did he say that? Because Christians are going to have enemies. And who are the enemies going to be? The people primarily who reject the gospel, reject Christ, reject the Lord.
Now, is that position coming from you as a professor or you as a Catholic?
Why is there this dichotomy? I don't see any dichotomy.
Well, I want to know if that's... Well, okay, let me clarify myself. Is that, I mean, do you think that's how Catholics think, or
Yes.
that's how Dr. Jones thinks?
I'm trying to interpret the Catholic tradition and how it's dealt with the Jews for 2,000 years. That was the purpose of this book. There was a Catholic position on the Jews. It was known as Secret Judaeus Non.
Okay.
Pope after Pope reiterated this position, all the way up, I would say, until Cardinal Holland in Poland in 1936. And it was basically a two-part position. No one has the right to harm the Jew. On the other hand, the Jew doesn't have the right to subvert the morals or the faith of a Christian community.
Okay.
And that was the basis for whatever peace there was in Europe during this period.
Okay. I want you to stay with me. We're going to play a clip for about a minute. The first one is a Catholic priest talking about anti-Semitism, and then right after that, Bill Maher of HBO, he said few things when the Pope was here, but we did not see a lot of people standing up and screaming about it. If it was the other way around, we would see a lot of Jews standing up. So we're going to play this, and then after that, I want your comment on actually both of them. So let's go to the DVD and listen to that.
A religious congregation of brothers and priests working in the Catholic Church in 30 countries using the apostolate of media. I have been a priest for over 30 years and been involved in Jewish-Christian dialogue for over 20 years. I would like to address the issue of anti-Semitism. It predates Christianity. It takes on many forms. Sometimes it's purely a religious anti-Semitism. Sometimes it's social and political. And in the 20th century, it was unfortunately racial. Generally, all of these currents of anti-Semitism get intermeshed, tangled up, and they result in the suffering of the Jewish people in a very real way. In living memory, millions were sent to their deaths simply because they were Jews. Therefore, anti-Semitism can never be taken lightly. It's always a serious matter. And it's especially serious for people who are religious. If religion is used to persecute the Jews, it's particularly heinous because God has loved the Jewish people throughout history, sustained and nourished them. And through the Jewish people, through Israel, God revealed how to live a godly life in the midst of an ungodly world. Therefore, we have to be very careful when it comes to anti-Semitism. There's no such thing as being just a little bit anti-Semitic. One typical thing that many people believe, but which is not true, is that the Jews control all the banks in the world, all the capital. Now, some people just hear that, they accept it, they go about their lives and don't really give it a second thought. They have a bit of misinformation that can be corrected through education, if they took the time to look into it.
Well, I've heard about this. Bill Maher has really been under attack by Catholics and other outraged people since he went on that rant last week about the Pope and about Pope Benedict's visit. Just listen to what he had to say.
I'd like to tip off law enforcement to an even larger child-abusing religious cult. Its leader also has a compound. And this guy not only operates outside the bounds of the law, but he used to be a Nazi and he wears funny hats.
All right, well, just last night, Mayor apologized, allegedly. Here's how he's trying to make amends. Listen.
The thing that argues for their side of this is that, you know what? He was coerced into that. He was a teenager. I wouldn't blame any teen. He was a 14-year-old kid in Nazi Germany. Of course, he's going to do what they tell him to do. So on that score, you know what, my Catholic friends? I will never make the Pope as a Nazi joke again. Because you're technically right, okay? And also because it distracts from the main point.
Yes, yes, we
the
still...
main point I was making...
I can't hear a thing.
Was the Pope, instead of a religious figure...
So you're going to have to summarize
was the CEO of a chain of nationwide daycare centers who had thousands of employees who had been caught molesting children and then covering it up. He would have been in jail.
Okay. We'll take it from the end. That was two different clips, one of them with a Catholic priest and the other one with Bill Maher of HBO, where he very much said some horrible things about the Pope and about Catholic priests. Why is it that a Jew such as Bill Maher can get on TV and say the things he says and you don't see the uproar, but if someone said anything about Jews, it will probably be the end of them? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I guess we have a double standard, don't we? What else can I say? There's a double standard here.
Okay. The most important thing is what the Catholic priest... Now, were you able to hear the Catholic priest?
No, I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. Well, very much...
What did he say?
To sum it up, he did say that for the last 20 years he had been working with a Jewish Catholic dialogue, and that God loved the Jewish people throughout history, and he made them prosper, etc., etc., and that the notion that these people have control of money and banks is nonsense, that's anti-Semitic. And so basically, I mean, that was a Catholic priest that was very much saying the opposite of what you are saying.
Right, right. Well, I mean, you can get priests or people to say anything. Let's cut to the heart of the matter right now. The church is faced with a crisis right now because there are certain elements within the church that now say that Jews can be saved without accepting Jesus Christ as their Savior. Okay? This is known as heresy. Okay? That's an impossibility according to the Catholic faith. Okay? You cannot be saved without accepting Jesus Christ. You cannot be saved by rejecting Jesus Christ, which is what the Jews do. Now, there was a cardinal in the church, not just a priest. Cardinal Walter Kaspar said this basically at a conference at Boston College in 2003. The church marched up to the brink of the abyss, okay, and then it stepped back, okay? The Pope just wrote a prayer, a new prayer for the Mass, Latin Mass, in which he said, we are going to pray for the conversion of the Jews, which means, yes, Jews have to convert if they want to be saved. And then, lo and behold, wrote an article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung in March in which he said, yes, as a matter of fact, Jews do have to accept Christ in order to be saved. So now made a historic step back from the abyss. And that will trickle down. It will take years maybe to trickle down, but eventually this priest will hear about it, and he will stop talking the way he's talking.
Okay. So that's the Catholic position. On the other hand, the Protestants' position, the John Hagee's position, the Christian Zionist position, that they want this Armageddon so the Jews can join in with the Christians or die. Now, Professor, why is it so important that we concentrate on these differences in religions? I mean, what somebody believes, if Catholics believe that the only way the Jews will be redeemed is if they join in the Catholic religion or accept Jesus Christ, why should we really care much about those things? I mean, in 2008, there are a lot more things that we need to worry about than having to worry about Catholics and Muslims and Jews and people's religions. Why is it so important?
Because the Jew is a theological construct, and that's the only way you can understand what's going on if you understand theology. So whether you like it or not, that's the crux of the issue. I mean, I could talk about that in a number of different ways. Some people say it's racial. I don't agree with that. I think the only way you can understand it is theological. There was a Jew in Poland by the name of Oswald Rufeisen, who was a hero, saved Jews from the Holocaust, ended up having to hide out. He ended up hiding out in a Carmelite convent, and he became a Catholic. And after that, he became a priest. And after the war was over, and after Israel was founded, he decided he's going to go to Israel because he was born a Jew, and they want them all to come back. So he went to Israel, and guess what? They wouldn't give this guy citizenship. Now, why wouldn't they give him citizenship? His mother was Jewish. He was a hero in the World War II, saved the lives of thousands, hundreds of Jews. Why didn't they give him citizenship? Because the Jew is a theological construct. It's a rejection of Christ. That's the heart of the matter. And until you understand that, you're never going to get anywhere in understanding the world situation.
Okay. Doctor, stay with me. We're going to go to the phones.
One caller.
With Liberty. Liberty?
Yeah, Dr. Wall and Professor Jones. I got two quick questions and one comment. One comment specifically is Bill Maher is a professed atheist. He was born of a Jewish and a Catholic parent, but raised Catholic. Number two, as a Protestant, I was taught that Ishmael came before Isaac, and Jacob and his 12 sons, the tribes, are Israel. And over 2 centuries of my Bibles that I've inherited from my ancestors, Palestine, it's always Palestine, not Israel. Currently, I want to know if the Seeds of Peace, which is a youth camp in New England held annually, is still held annually and funded for the Palestinian and the Jewish tweens.
Liberty, do you have a question for Dr. Jones?
Yeah, whether or not there's still the Seeds of Peace in New England every summer for the Palestinian children and the Jews.
Yeah, I'm not sure if
Dr.
Dr.
counselors are.
Yeah, I don't know if Dr. Jones knows that. Do you know anything about the Seeds of Peace in New England?
Don't know anything about that, sorry.
Okay, now he doesn't know anything about it, Larry.
Okay, well, it's a summer camp for Jews and
right, yeah,
Palestinians.
I'm familiar with it. Yes, I know about it.
Peace be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so if I understand you correctly, this war, or this, I don't know if you want to call it a war, it's going to go on until the end of time, until the Jews accept Christ. That from the point of view of Catholics. Do I understand you correct?
I think that's the Orthodox interpretation of Scripture.
Okay,
yeah.
So, I mean, are we going to see in the future, do you think it's going to have to come to an ultimate collusion here?
No, there's nothing inevitable about the wars that we have right now. These are a function of the free will of the people who are involved. And what I'm saying in the latter part of the book is that once discourse has been so severely censored, as it has in our country, where you can't say certain things, then naturally this power just concentrates and you end up getting in things like Iraq. There was nothing inevitable about Iraq. It was a totally gratuitous act. And it happened because the Jews have so much power. I mean, Walt and Mearsheimer have talked about the Israel lobby. That's what I'm talking about here.
Now, because
go
we're running out of time here, but I do need to ask you this because I'm watching this Catholic Jewish thing for a long time, but I'm seeing it's like Catholics are changing their mind, or they're being influenced to change their minds a lot, because we see a lot of influence of Zionists and Jews on the church. Do you see that?
I mean, I just got a letter from a man who was a priest who published 3 of my books. He's going to found an institute to fight Islamofascism.
Okay, hold on. I wasn't sure. Hold on a second. I have somebody on the line that I wasn't even aware of. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Jones. This is Joanna Francis calling. I wanted to ask him, Dr. Jones, if he thinks Roe v. Wade will ever be overturned, and does he have confidence that the 5 Catholics on the Supreme Court will sort of keep the culture war in balance, or at least keep the worst from happening where we end up like the Soviet Union?
Okay, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I don't have any more. I don't have confidence anymore that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. I just don't have that feeling anymore. Okay,
what about the 5 Catholics on the Supreme Court?
Well, I mean, I said Catholics are a defeated nation. And so Catholics are always willing to internalize the commands of their oppressors. So, I mean, this has been the Republican strategy to get Catholic votes for 25 years now, and I don't see any fruits from it. So I've lost hope in that.
So wait a minute, Dr. Jones. If Catholics are a defeated nation, and in my opinion, Muslims are a defeated nation too, what's left?
You and me. The truth. The truth is great.
Yeah.
It will prevail.
That's why me and you are called anti-Semitic.
People don't stay defeated forever. The truth, they need the truth to encourage them. They need leaders to lead them, and so on and so forth. And, you know, as people used to say, the South will rise again.
Very good. On that note, Dr. Jones, I only have time to say thank you very much for coming on the program. It has been a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know, very interesting, and thanks for everyone who called us. You know, we bring you people that you don't hear of on mainstream media, just like me. We bring you the truth. We tell it to you just like it is. A lot of times you don't like it, but the truth is seldom liked because, like they say, the truth hurts. I really believe him when he says Catholics are a defeated nation. I probably just wanted to hear it from a Catholic, but I can tell you I do know that the Arabs and the Muslims are defeated nations too, regardless of how much money they have and how much power they think they have. I really believe, and on this show for the last going on 6 years now, we have explained to you the power of the Zionists. We had explained to you the power of what many people, whenever we start talking about this, they will call us anti-Semitic. The truth is, he who controls money controls all, and we do need to understand that. But maybe the Arabs and the Muslims would take notice, actually mainly the Arabs would take notice of what Iran has done, because with Iran standing on its own feet, they very much forced the United States to accept things on their term. Now we are talking about opening up, the United States administration is talking about opening up an office in Iran. Very much we heard the president a couple of weeks ago saying that, actually we did not hear him, but he did say that war is off the table with Iran. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, we only have like half a minute left to say we will see you next Thursday And we're going to bring you a congressman out of Indiana next week who also did not like what is happening in Washington. As a matter of fact, he was forced out by AIPAC. So we will be back next Thursday, 8 o'clock. Go out and do the right thing, as we always say. And just be good. Good night. You being good?